How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Project Geekology. My name is Dakota. I'm joined as always with...
The Acolyte. Anthony,
I kind of like that, the Acolyte Anthony. We're actually covering the Acolyte this week, and it's a very interesting week to cover the Acolyte. We had this planned for weeks in advance. We did not know that this was going to be the week that they canceled a second season of the show. So that will be a fun thing to discuss. Bittersweet, obviously. Well, it's not even sweet. To some people, it may be sweet. To me, it's not that sweet, but we'll get over. We'll get into all that.
bitter for some, sweet for others.
Yes. It'll be fun to talk about the show, so I guess that is sweet, but not sweet because of the timing of the cancellation. But so that'll make the discussion a little bit more interesting. But before we get into any of that, Anthony, what have you been up to this past week?
Obviously preparing for this episode, but right now I'm in the midst of my annual rewatching of The Lord of the Rings.
Really? Okay. I was thinking about starting that up again. It feels like the right time.
I don't know, it felt like the time to watch it. I always, I think that there's every once in a while, I may miss a year that I don't watch it, but I just felt like I really wanted to watch it. A couple of years back, you and I really dived into those movies.
Oh my god, dude! If you are interested in hearing us talk about those movies for hours on end, we have a podcast that is basically as long, like a series of podcasts. It's 6 separate podcasts. We broke each movie up into 2 podcasts, and combined, they're about the length of the extended editions. So if you are in need of, just a discussion, a gushing of, just fan love for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, specifically the extended editions, you can find that here on the podcast. Please go listen to it. We had a lot of fun with those.
Yeah, we really did. I still think that it was a good idea for us to break up those movies into 2 episodes. The way that we discussed them was very drawn out, but I do feel like there's so much about those films to talk about that you have to break down those films. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that somebody today listened to one of our Lord of the Rings episodes, Fellowship of the Ring Part 2.
All right. Shout out to you.
Shout out to you. Apt timing,
Yeah.
But yeah. So I've been watching that. I hopped back onto Overwatch because they released a new hero this week. It's a new support hero named Juno. She was the one that was codenamed Space Ranger, back, was it late last year? And so it's been interesting being able to try her out. And like I said, I'll always love Overwatch, but I'm in a time right now where I don't play it as much. So
yeah,
it's a big. So usually it takes something big, maybe an event or a new hero for me to want to go back in and try it out. And who knows? Maybe after playing a little bit of this, I'll be I'll hit a period of time where I feel like playing a little bit, but
right, you'll get back into the swing of it.
Right. But remember I had been playing some Elden Ring, and I found my old 3DS. So I had sent Dakota a picture of me playing Pokemon. It was Pokemon Yellow that I was playing, and I had it on my 3DS, the virtual console. And so I was playing that, dude. That's a blast from the past, dude.
An actual throwback.
Yeah. Although I didn't have Yellow back then, I had Red back then.
Okay.
Yellow's the crystal of that era.
Right. That's the one that came out that I think had color.
Yeah. It has. It's so weird. It's a lot of it doesn't have color. The background has maybe some a tint, and then there's some Pokemon that have color.
Right.
Pikachu kind of has some color depending on what perspective you're seeing him from. And
it's very limited, but you know,
right.
back when that came out in the late 90s, that was, you know, super high tech, because all the games prior to that for handheld stuff were black and white.
Right.
You know, this was the first like real foray into a color, because this was Pokemon's entry into the Game Boy Color space, you know.
Right. Whereas like Pokemon Red and Blue, and I think Yellow too, like all of those like had released on like the original Game Boy. There was like like the black and white era, Fat Boy, gray Game Boy, and I think that when you played Yellow on the Game Boy Color or something like that, that it showed color. It was an interesting era. Like just hearing the old like soundtrack, it kind of brought me back, man. I really do think that you and I should do an episode covering Pokemon, because Pokemon was such a huge part of our youth. That totally. Yu-Gi-Oh was hugely a part of our youth, and so I definitely would love to take a dive into those at some point. But yeah, man, it was really cool, like being able to do that. Play my old 3DS. I was messing around with some of the old Fire Emblem games that I had on there. Fire Emblem Awakening was like the one that really like I knew about Fire Emblem from the years before, but I didn't really take the dive until Awakening, and that's what got me into that series. I had always played games like that, like Final Fantasy Tactics and some others, but not
Tactics
really.
Was so good.
Yeah, dude, I love Tactics so much.
Such a good game.
But yeah, man. So just a lot of nerding out gaming. Prepping for this, dude. We got the trailer for War of the Rohirrim. Looks so good, man.
I actually have not watched it.
Looks so good. I cannot wait.
All right, I'm gonna check it out after this.
Cannot wait.
Yeah.
I'm
excited for that.
So
very excited for that.
Actually, seeing that trailer was like really what prompted me to come back and watch Lord of the Rings.
That was the catalyst.
Yeah. I was like, you know what, man? It's been a while, you know, and so like, you know, when I got to Two Towers, I was like, okay, yeah, like it's really got me to that mindset, because, you know, it's really about Rohan and, you know, the Rohirrim. So the Two Towers is what focuses mostly on them, you know. So yeah, that I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, man, enough about me. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing a Lord of the Rings marathon again. For different reasons. Well, I mean, I saw that the War of the Rohirrim trailer had come out, and some of the screenshots looked pretty cool, so I was just like, that kind of got me interested in revisiting the films. But also, the Rings of Power Season 2 is coming out soon, and the trailer for that did look good. I haven't finished the first season of that, so I'm almost like, I want to watch that whole season again, because I only watched the first 5 episodes or so. Yeah. It was coming out at the same time as House of the Dragon, and House of the Dragon was such a far superior show, in my opinion, and just in terms of just writing. So I was just like, it fell by the wayside for me. And yeah, I want to give it another chance and check out season 2. But yeah, I was just talking to Jen, my wife, about how, you know, we really should jump into Lord of the Rings soon.
I never finished Rings of Power either. I never got to finish that. Because I think you want to do an episode on it? Let's do an episode on it. Yeah, we could.
You know, once we catch up with everything that we have promised you guys.
Yeah, which honestly we're coming to a head on that anyway. So
yeah, I think we just have Deadpool and Wolverine at this point that like we have like definitely signed on to. But yeah, what else have I been up to? Jen, my wife, has started rewatching Game of Thrones, and I've been kind of watching over my shoulder while I do other things. You know, I've seen it so many times. I know what's going on. But she just got to the season finale of the first season. Great stuff, dude. The whole episode 9, episode 10 is just top tier.
Why can't Sean Bean ever survive the first of anything?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, man. But while she was doing that, I've been reading the Avatar graphic novels. So the first Avatar series had 6 trilogies of graphic novels. So there's The Promise, The Search, The Rift, Smoke and Shadow, North and South, and Imbalance. And each of those graphic novels were trilogies of graphic novels, and that they've been kind of combined into like library editions of those, like omnibus books. But yeah, so I read all of those. I read a couple others, and I think I've read, like, by my count, 21 graphic novels within the Avatar universe since last we spoke. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm making sure I keep all my timeline notes in order, because eventually I do want to make an Avatar timeline. Whether that's before or after my MCU timeline, we shall see. But yeah, I'm full on with that. So I'm really excited about that. And that's pretty much what I've been up to this past week.
Nice.
A lot of reading, but it's been really fun. A lot of those graphic novels I have not read before. They've just been sitting on my shelf gathering dust. I know I've read The Promise and a little bit of The Search, but now that I've actually gone past that point, and it's a couple years now after the events of the Avatar series, seeing the world develop and start to take shape as it would eventually come to be in The Legend of Korra, it's really interesting seeing how Team Avatar and you know, like Aang and the rest of his team are instrumental in all the changes that basically lead up to the era of Korra. So I'm really, really pleased about that.
I really need to hop onto the graphic novels and the novels of Avatar, because I always say that Avatar is probably my favorite cartoon, mostly because of the story. And I mean, the story and just the world and everything about it. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these other cartoons that we grew up with, I'll always love them. They'll always be nostalgic to me. I'll always want to revisit them in some kind of way. But when it comes to the world that was built and the story that was told, Avatar will always be like my favorite cartoon. And it gets so close to being an anime, you know? It's like very, like, it's one of those ones that it's a cartoon that's accepted by the anime community. You know, they're like, you are not an anime, but you know what? You're good.
It's American financed and written, but Korean animated. So it's not technically a Japanese animation, so it can't be anime. But it was definitely emulating that vibe.
Right.
And it definitely meets the highs of many of those, anime in terms of storytelling. And in many ways it surpasses it. But, yeah, so I totally agree with that. But
I need to hop onto those, onto the books, man.
The books are great.
Yeah.
The books are great. The recent one that came out, The Reckoning of Roku, I think you'll really like that one. It's just a really solid read. It's a really interesting corner of the Avatar universe, and seeing how Roku, begins. You know, like by the time the Avatar story begins in The Last Airbender, Roku is the previous Avatar. He's lived a full life. He's he's a wizened old man who is Aang's mentor. And he's just a 16-year-old kid who barely believes that he's the Avatar to begin with. You know, like, so seeing him come to, understand his abilities, try to figure out who his friends are and all that. It's a really good read. And Monk Gyatso is in it too, so that's pretty fun.
Nice.
Monk Gyatso being Aang's airbending trainer back, before the 100-Year War began. Yeah, so
that was
really
his
cool
boy.
stuff. That was his boy. Let's talk a little bit about Star Wars for the rest of the podcast. How about that?
Ooh, is it going to be a little bit or a lot of it?
Probably a little of a lot.
Yes, man, the Acolyte, huh? The Acolyte. I feel like we picked such an interesting time to record this. Like, it's new, but it's still generating a lot of buzz, you know?
And it's such a bizarre kind of buzz too, and I understand the reasons behind them canceling the show. I don't like that. I feel like no show should go with just one season. If it doesn't make it past the second season, you gave it your best shot, the audience just isn't there, whatever. But the fact that it's canceled after the first season feels reactionary. And yeah, it was a very expensive show.
It was definitely reactionary because I think that directly after the Acolyte was finished up, didn't they say, oh yeah, there's going to be a second season?
They were, yeah. I mean, the directors, the writers, they were all kind of gung ho for it. It's all a matter of, whether Disney is going to pick it up for a second season or not. They never actually committed to it on paper, or like whatever. It basically needed to get enough buzz for there to be a second season. But yeah, so here we are. It was a very expensive series. It cost about the same as like the prequels did in terms of inflation, or a single prequel. So comparatively, if you want to go there, The Phantom Menace cost $115 million to produce. The Acolyte cost $180 million to produce. But if you adjust for inflation, The Phantom Menace today would cost about $214 million to produce. So technically, in terms of the spending power, The Phantom Menace had more money to work with than The Acolyte, but still The Acolyte is a very exorbitantly expensive TV show. Most TV shows don't crack 100,000 or 100 million, and this was double that. So I understand, like if they can't find a way to budget that for a second season and cut out, most of that fat in terms of spending power, I understand that they don't want to go with a second season. But knowing that, all they need to do is say, hey, you have a limit of $50 million this season. Do with it what you will. And I'm sure they would. I'm sure it would be fine because, they'd probably, instead of making sets, they'd jump over to the volume, and they would use and utilize that. Because the big issue with the Acolyte is they made massive, massive sets. The forest planet for episodes 4 and 5, that was one huge set. Like, apparently, like the actors were getting lost in the set because they had built so much. So yeah.
But that's cool though. Like I mean,
no, it is cool. It is really cool. Like I would love to have visited that and seen like how much detail went into everything.
That's probably why some of those were the stronger episodes of the season, especially 5. But yeah, that's I could tell that some of it had some practicality. I just didn't understand the scale of it. But that's insane that it's large enough for you to get lost in.
Yes,
they built a literal forest.
Dude, they had maps. They had maps of the set.
Oh my gosh,
they had maps of the different rooms in the set. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm telling the truth.
It's here. Over there. It was like they built their own like mini theme park.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Last we saw Daphne Keane, she was in section B. Let's go find her. Oh man,
they were getting lost on the show. When they were lost, it was them, the actors, actually lost.
yeah. But yeah, so like I'm saying, I understand. 180 million. If you don't have the audience, you can't really continue that.
Right. Yeah.
But if you budget the second season, you can definitely,
at least finish the story, But
yeah,
I guess the way that they're probably going to do that is what, like a novel, graphic novel, something along.
Yeah,
the
so
lines.
there's already several prequel novels and comics in the works. There's going to be a Kelnaka a Kelnaka one-shot comic book that's coming out in a month. There's a young adult comic that features Jackie and Yord, like on an adventure or something, early next year, and then like mid next year there's a Vernestra Rowe and Master Indara comic that's set 20 years before the Acolyte. So we're going to get plenty of Acolyte content with those characters.
It's so
and
crazy.
We can continue that. We can continue that through like past that point, and I think that's ultimately what's going to happen.
It's so crazy that Vernestra Rowe, she was in this show. And then you hear her being talked about and stuff, and popping up in the books like before that.
Yes, yeah. So you're reading The Rising Storm right now. I don't know if she's in it. She might make a small appearance.
They talk about her. They talk about her.
Yeah,
She's somebody's apprentice.
she is the former apprentice of Stellan Gios.
That's what it is. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and she's one of the primary characters in the junior novels. You know, like she's like the lead Jedi Knight of those junior novels, and she's notable for being like the youngest Jedi Knight in living memory, basically. But anyway, yeah.
That's
so.
cool.
Seeing characters like Vernestra pop up again was interesting. We didn't have any frame of reference prior to this as to how long Mary Allens live. Mary Allens being her species. She's a Mary Allen. And now we know that they live well past 100 years because she looks like she's maybe in her 40s in terms of human years.
Right.
But this is over 100 years after. She's at least 116 years old by the time this show takes place. So yeah, it's really interesting. What's also interesting is that they brought back characters from the prequels, characters that a lot of people had issues with. Specifically Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Right. Okay, so I'm actually glad that you brought that up. So you made, and we'll put it into the show notes, but you made an episode about a lot of gripes about canon breaking stuff, and Ki-Adi-Mundi is one of those gripes. Did you want to kind of go over a little bit of some of those gripes that a lot of these people had, and like what your answer, not all of them obviously, if you want to learn more about that, watch the video, it'll be in the show notes. But let's talk about Ki-Adi-Mundi and some of the bigger things that people were very, it wasn't even like, I don't even think that they were nitpicking it for the sake of that they were really worried about it being canon. I think that they were nitpicking it just because right off the rip they decided that they didn't like the show.
Well, that's ultimately the case, you know, like you can go back to any of these like YouTubers, like the Fandom Menace people's channels and look up the Acolyte. They've been talking crap about this series since it was announced years ago. So there's precedent. They already determined in their head, this is the show that we're going to go after when it comes out. You know, this is the show that we're going to make active money on because it fits our, woke narrative, that Disney's trying to push. Whatever. When it comes to Ki-Adi-Mundi, and as far as like me like going through some of the points that I made in my video, the video being 20 times that people thought the Acolyte broke canon and actually didn't. And I kind of break down how in lore it totally works, everything that they're saying. As far as Ki-Adi-Mundi goes, I don't plan to like go over everything.
Right. Yeah, no, you don't have to.
If it comes up naturally in the conversation, like over the next hour, I'll touch on my rationale for certain things. But you brought up what my thoughts are with Ki-Adi-Mundi being present. So it's a big issue, but it's not at all at the same time. You have Ki-Adi-Mundi in The Phantom Menace, which takes place in 32 BBY. 32 years before the Battle of Yavin, and he claims that the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. Obviously, he's wrong. We know that he's wrong because the Sith have existed. They're in hiding. They have been in hiding for millennia, basically. And, the Phantom Menace is their, coming out party. They're ready to show the world that they're still here. And that's when Darth Maul and, Palpatine make their first moves towards destabilizing the Republic.
Right.
So we have that knowledge. We have the knowledge that the Jedi, at least some Jedi, thought that they were extinct. But you also have to balance that with they obviously weren't because, they've been around. So likely over the course of 1,000 years, they have met Jedi at some points, They have been hiding in plain sight. They're good at masking their, dark side intentions and stuff. But they, for whatever reason, have not been like truly discovered. And this is one of those instances in the Acolyte where like they almost got discovered. Right, obviously, right. we find that nobody survives and knows that the Sith are continuing past this point, except for maybe Vernestra and maybe Yoda. So when it comes to Ki-Adi-Mundi's presence, one of the big issues was that in Legends, which is a different continuity than the canon that we now have. Legends being like the accepted canon before Disney bought it.
Right.
Ki-Adi-Mundi was only around 60 years old during the time of The Phantom Menace. That obviously doesn't work if this show is 100 years before The Phantom Menace in 132 BBY. You know, you can make a whole bunch of, you know, like, well, in canon, they don't have any real basis for how long this character can live. You know, like, we don't know how old Syrians, that's his race, live. So it was kind of like an interesting discussion in my video, like, in terms of all that.
And even then, even within the accepted canon, they had changed it a couple times, like the year that he was born. Like,
right.
They had shifted it like a couple years, right? It's so they weren't even sure back then, like before Disney bought it. And, you know, and I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, we are talking about fictional individuals. Like, nothing is set in stone. A lot can be changed.
Right. Yeah. And he's a side character. He's literally tertiary. Like, he's not a secondary character. He has like one line in that movie.
right. Like, you see him a couple times, like throughout the prequels. You know, he'll talk. He has, like, you know, some battle scenes in Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, like, this is where I feel like, you know, you start grasping for straws, you know, like changing the age of somebody's not breaking the canon of anything. The story's not being significantly changed.
Yeah.
Oh, because he was back there, he should have, or since he was around back then, he should have known that the Sith were around. But you saw for the most part that everything that was happening was pretty much being kept under wraps throughout the series. You know, they weren't going to the High Council. It was like very just like the smaller group of Jedi that knew. And yeah, for the most part, all of them died except for Vanessa Rowe.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they pick this story up, because clearly she's about to tell Yoda, you know, like, that she messed up. You know, she clearly is responsible for the deaths of all these Jedi that she sent out. She has to tell Yoda about that. Yoda would find out anyway. Yeah, you mentioned that some of the accepted birth years for Ki-Adi-Mundi in Legends didn't, like, work with one another. So in Legends, here's where the issue takes place. In Legends, the Phantom Menace begins in 33 BBY and ends in 32 BBY, versus canon, where it's just 32 BBY. So 60 years before 33 BBY takes you to 93 BBY, which would be his accepted birth year within Legends, because he was 60 years before the Phantom Menace began, supposedly. But later on, I think in like 2012, they had a trading card of him that claimed he was born in 92 BBY. So it doesn't really jive. It's a little bit all over the place. So yeah, it was the issue with Ki-Adi's birth were pretty much only prevalent for people who were trying to look for and poke holes in something.
Right. And, you know, for the most part, I know that we're talking about a lot of the gripes that people have of the show that, you know, really just don't fit well with, you know, it's like you're grasping for straws at this point to find something to hate. But, you know, you and I do agree that this is not a perfect show. You know, there is a lot about the show to not like, and that there are gripes that people have that are very valid. And one of the things, I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and his wife that she watches Star Wars, but she's not really up on Star Wars. But her biggest issue with it is the acting. And the acting is definitely something that's not good.
It varies actor to actor.
Right. It varies actor to actor. Like, I feel like Daphne Keane that played Jecki, like she played that character very well, you know? Mm-hmm. But then you have Amanda Stenberg that it would kind of vary. Like, she would have her moments, but then like other moments would be a little bit weaker. It wasn't all that consistent, you know?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I did at first. I really liked her performance. The first couple episodes, I didn't have an issue with it, but after a certain point, I just felt that it kept feeling the same. Like every situation she was in, whether she was playing one twin or the other twin, I felt like their characters started blending together. And, from like a meta perspective, yeah, these characters are technically the same because they're like split twins in the Force.
Right, right. Like it's a one person that was like the dark side was separated from the light, but in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Right.
But I felt that, there was subtleties in the way that she played both characters. The way that May Anasea walked was different than Osha, but the facial expressions I didn't really buy a lot of the times. It was sometimes so subtle that it didn't give off any emotion to the audience, I guess. I don't think that I disliked her performance. It was just of everyone like extremely weak. You know who did a fantastic performance, in my opinion, was the twins' mother, Mother Anasea, played by Jodie Turner-Smith. Every scene that she was in, she totally grabbed me in terms of like her facial disposition, the extent in which she was able to capture emotion. But speaking about like those flashbacks, one thing that I don't understand about the show, and this is a minor criticism. I don't hate the show for this, obviously, but yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Why would the adult twins be played by the same actor, but the young twins would be played by two very different looking actresses?
Yeah, I noticed that too. And it's funny, before you actually said what your gripe was, that was like one of the thoughts in my mind. And yeah, it's because I mean this is essentially, it's the same person, it really is the same person split into two. So there wouldn't need to be two separate actors, for the young one. Maybe they couldn't find a child actor that
could embody two roles.
Right. And so maybe these two seemed that they were each side very well. And I feel like for the most part, like they did the what they were supposed to, like they weren't terrible as far as child actors, but yeah, there's just a lot of things that were a little like muddied, were just Soul's like intentions for like wanting to take on the girls. And
so here's the thing, like what's important to recognize is that I don't think either of us hated the series. Am I right in saying that? Like you didn't?
I didn't hate the series. Like I don't think that it's the best that I've seen, but there were a lot of things about it that I liked, and there was a lot of things that it brought into Star Wars. Maybe my minor details that I thought were really cool, like the introduction of, it wasn't necessarily introduced, but it was the first time we've seen it on screen, was cortosis. Yeah. Was it talked about in the books at all?
In a couple.
Okay.
But it wasn't anything that has really like broken into like the mainstream canon.
Right. So anything that can face off between, with the lightsaber, I really think is cool, because there was a lot in Legends that could actually combat against lightsabers, vibroblades being one of them. But since then, with the Disney canon, I mean, there's a couple things like Beskar can hold up. Cortosis can. I think that there's Saber. Yeah, the dark saber. I think that in the Darth Maul book, that there's this weapon that this like Force cult is using that can actually deflect lightsabers and stuff too. So there's been some stuff added since then, but I just thought that Cortosis was really cool, because while these other things could just deflect, awesome, while all these other things could deflect, this one was like a little EMP, and it like disrupted the blades. Dude, I thought that was sick. I was like, okay, and the way that he used it, the way that Chimera used it strategically to pretty much disable one Jedi while he's fighting off another to come back to this other Jedi because they got their lightsabers back up. It was really, really cool in the usage of that. And, you know, and speaking of strong performances, like,
oh yeah, Manny Jacinto did such a good job.
He surprised me. Like I said, I was so used to his goofy, crazy, you know, his like silly, goofy character in The Good Place that, you know, that's who I saw, and he kind of had a little bit of that like silliness in the beginning when we didn't realize who he was, but then when he swapped, dude,
yeah, he like switched his persona into Sith mode.
So
dude,
good. Okay.
Such a good mic drop moment, like for that character and for the show. I also felt that the actor for Soul was fantastic. Lee Jung Jae, he learned English to play this role, and I think he did a fantastic job. Like everything that I saw with him on screen, like he really put his heart into that.
I just find it insane. Like, why would he subject his life from, you know, he survived Squid Game just to like be a Jedi, you know, to like fight.
yeah, I know. But so like I was saying, neither of us hate this show, but we both have valid criticisms of it. I think the pacing
there are valid. Yes.
I think the pacing was all over the place.
Yes.
The fact that, you know, you would get this. You would start to get the mystery rolling, and then you'd like cut away for a whole episode just to show us a flashback.
Dude,
why not intercut?
Why
not intercut flashbacks inside the episodes so that we can keep the story moving? Because twice in the show they totally disrupted the linear narrative of it, and it didn't work.
I know, right? They could have done flashback like early Lost, you know, like you're still in the middle of the episode, but then they have like a minor moment.
Yes, totally, 100%. And I think that would have worked so much better, especially considering, you know, like in The Last Jedi, you have flashbacks to Luke and Kylo Ren, and they both have different opinions of like what happened in that moment where like Luke ignited his lightsaber in front of him.
Right. It wasn't a whole like 30 minutes. Like they didn't take up a whole chunk of the movie just to talk about
exactly. It. Yes.
You know,
they should have done that for this. Basically, was what I'm trying to say. Is like, you know, you can have different opinions, which is what happened. You know, in the first flashback episode, it was very witch force cult centric, where it was basically following the twins, versus, you know, the latter episode, which was following the Jedi. If they just intercut that with some of the characters' inner monologues, dude, that would have been so much better.
And the thing that kind of makes that a little bit disruptive is that this series is so limited. You know, you only have 8 episodes, and you're trying to take pretty much about a quarter of the series in flashbacks, you know, like, yeah, dude, like, you know, now if you had, you know, 12, 15, you know, like the old school 20 episodes,
we're
like,
never getting that again.
Could throw
we're
in
never getting
like,
that again.
we're never going back to that, especially with how expensive things are now. But I just think that, I agree. The flashbacks were necessary, but I just don't think that the entirety, like, we didn't need to know. There was a lot that was put on screen as far as flashbacks that we really just didn't need to know. I mean, I know that they were trying to build up on like, you know, the backgrounds of these characters, but we really needed more of the meat of what happened, and then like maybe any supporting information for what it is that happened, you know. And like, no, I agree. Like, the pacing was all over the place, inconsistent acting,
and some of the character motivations, like, I just wasn't
right
into, like the character of Torben, the Padawan that, you know, 16 years later is, you know, taking the bearish vow. That Padawan, his motivation just to go back home to Coruscant and, like, you know, potentially steal these 2 young ones, it didn't make any sense. Like, I
can understand like a young Padawan wanting to go back to Coruscant,
Sure,
like being
that is
stuck.
your home. Yeah.
Right. Or well, I mean, he's kind of like stuck on some like backwater planet, that is probably really boring to him. So I understand like his motivations, but like but it's the same thing with Soul. His motivations for wanting to take them. I understand that they didn't quite understand what was going on with that coven, and maybe they were tapping into some stuff that was ethically crossing the line, but the fact that like he wanted to take them on because he felt he wanted to take them off because he felt it, like, oh, they're destined to be my Padawan and all stuff. Like attachments like that aren't really like something like a Jedi.
Yeah.
I mean, you do get some Jedi that kind of like toe the line a little bit, like your boy in the books, Elzar Mann. Like that guy's a ladies' man, so you do have some Jedi that toe the line, but I don't think I was convinced with Soul's reasonings, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It was kind of like, in the name of taking down this coven, or in the name of, because I feel like the Force wants them to be, wants me to train them, and that's just, I don't know, like I just wasn't really convinced of that either.
I think there was a bunch of stuff that was half baked.
Yes.
In terms of it needed a couple more rewrites just to like get rationales down a little bit better. And yeah, so there are clear issues with the series, but most of the issues that I have could have easily been ironed out with a second season. Yeah, everything, all the character motivations are what they are in the first season, as they are.
Right.
But the issues that people have going forward can definitely be addressed, which is why this feels so reactionary, and it feels like they're pandering to the loudest fans, in the fandom.
Well,
and it's frustrating.
It'll probably be ironed out in some other way.
Oh, it totally will. Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of some of the issues that the prequels had some of it was ironed out with Clone Wars. Yeah, a lot of the things most of
the issues and the prequels were ironed out in the Clone Wars. Yeah. So Clone Wars is so good because of that.
Yeah. And so I feel like we'll probably get something like that, maybe in the form of a novel or graphic novel, or I don't know, something. They probably won't do any sort of visual TV show media surrounding it, but they'll probably try to iron it out in that kind of way. But you are correct, because of the timing, it's like very knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of gives a voice to some people that are essentially like whiny babies, Look, I know that I'm taking a shot, but like the thing is you're that right, like yeah. When you give a voice to whiny babies, they're gonna continue. They're gonna continue to whine,
like for the rest of time.
When you said no to that chocolate milk, and then you give it to them anyway, that's just gonna like really continue that type of behavior. Look, I understand that they had some gripes, and they had some valid gripes, and maybe they were reacting to things that they didn't fully understand or wanted to try to understand. But at the end of the day, if you're making a YouTube channel that's based on Star Wars and really diving into Star Wars, you might want to give it the benefit of the doubt. Look, like you and I, we understand that this show is not perfect, that there is things that it definitely needs to, they definitely need to work out a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not the worst that we've seen. It's like, I would say like it's maybe like middle of the pack, like borderline, maybe going up a little bit.
Yeah, so let's compare it a little bit to some of the other shows. We have had I would say that the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian are kind of peak Star Wars TV. Like, yeah, they captured something that had never been captured before, and it was great. Season 3.
It set like a standard, you know, those first two.
It did.
It set a bar, you know.
And then they had Book of Boba Fett, which is kind of a weird amalgam of ideas. And
they messed up. They messed up big time on that. Like they just because
it was such a strange way for that character to be taken.
Well, it's a strange way, and the thing is that they really didn't understand the identity of the show going into that. So
that's a really good way to put it.
You know, that they called it the Book of Boba Fett, but then like you had half the season that was centered on Mandalorian. It became Mandalorian 2.5, like season 2.5. Like, you know, like you don't do that. Like you really just messed up this man's like, you know, season, because I really, really like Tamara Morrison as Boba Fett. I feel like he has the attitude. It's just the writing that just messed him up, and you could tell he enjoys playing this character. Like Boba Fett in what was he in, season 1 or season 2 of
I think they teased him at the end of season 1, but he was in season 2.
Like he was like really awesome in that, you know?
Totally, yeah.
And so they really like messed it up. But yeah,
when it comes to Book of Boba Fett, I think it was just such a critical misfire of like the character and his intentions moving forward. Like, why would the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy just give that up for the sake of wanting to basically become Jabba the Hutt, but a good Jabba the Hutt, but still a crime lord, but a good crime lord? Like, what was the
with some Power Rangers?
What was the rationale behind that? I just don't understand. Like, I'm really I find it so difficult to like comprehend. Like, where do you take that story now that he's like rode a Rancor through Mos Espa? Like, where is this going? Like,
and what really like, and I think that what really like, and mind you, like all right, y'all, like you guys are like picking the Acolyte apart, but like we have a show like this around where they bring in an amazing character from Clone Wars and Cad Bane. Like Cad Bane is freaking crazy in Clone Wars, and then like they kind of like they put him into this like wacky show, and like I mean he has a couple good moments, and then kill him off.
I feel like that's not the last we'll see of him.
I don't think so either.
It seems anticlimactic enough for them to just kind of like, I didn't actually die. You have also Mandalorian season 3 was a mess. It was all over the place. It was clear that they were trying to pick up the pieces that they had written for the Rangers of the New Republic, the scrapped show that was supposed to air or was supposed to star Gina Carano. It was clear that they were trying to capture what was written for that and bring the Mandalorian to like a new starting place, basically, so that they can start their run up to the upcoming movie. Basically, that's what it was. And with Ahsoka, there's a lot I love about that show.
Yeah.
But there's some really wasted moments as well. Like, I don't think it looked that great, especially like during the fight scenes and all that. I feel like it could have been a lot better. But when it comes to, remember when like the witches, they decided that they were going to bring the stormtroopers back to life as like zombies? Nothing happened. Like, it was just, they were like, they kind of blocked the door a little bit. Like, it was no threat to them at all. It wasn't scary. It was bizarre. Like, it was
I think it was
a non-thing.
I think they realized that in that moment that they weren't gonna do that. Those zombies were probably not gonna stop them, but they needed it just to hold off just long enough to finish what they were doing. But
I agree.
You know, but you know that. But you know, aside from that, yeah, like you know, we have shows like that, shows like Ahsoka. We have Obi-Wan, which like. I also like I know that there's issues with space and certain things that didn't make sense, but for the most part, like I didn't hate Obi-Wan either.
Okay. Where I stand with Obi-Wan is I think that it would have been a fantastic novel, but when it translated to screen, you need a more competent director. Most of the issues that I have with the Obi-Wan series is the actual way that it's presented on screen. The story's fine. The story makes sense. And I'm sure, little things like, Princess Leia runs away from bandits looks fine on a script. It looks fine on paper. But as soon as you visualize that and show like how slow this little actress is moving and how many times these bandits could have grabbed her up in that scene, that it ruins the suspension of disbelief. Like it just, with a competent director, you'd be able to figure that out because on camera it didn't look like that. There's a bunch of like spatial awareness stuff in the Obi-Wan series that would have worked fine on paper but did not translate to screen, and I have like serious issues with that, but I liked the story for the most part.
There may be a little bit of an override as far as peak, but we have Andor also.
Andor is actually peak. Like I will say that Andor season 1 is better than any Mandalorian has ever been.
Well, Mandalorian was, Mandalorian is great and I love it, but it's definitely a lot of it's very fan servicey. It gives you that Mandalorian. It gives you the Boba Fett that you wanted to see, and
Andor is like a political thriller, from start to end.
But I think the thing about Andor is that people asked for something like Mandalorian. Nobody asked for Andor. Nobody asked for Andor. There's people who like Cassian Andor and probably wanted to see more of him, but nobody asked for like a whole TV show of Cassian Andor, and nobody expected it to be the way that it did.
No.
It's insane. It is insane how good. I'm like, dude, like, can we get more Star Wars TV like this? Like,
What's interesting is that Andor cost more money than The Acolyte, got less viewers than The Acolyte, and is getting a whole second season. I'm not saying that it doesn't deserve it, because obviously good series needs to be continued to its completion. That's fine. And I'm happy about it. And it got award buzz, which is great for Disney Plus because award buzz is very important for streaming services. So I understand that gets a second season, but make it make sense, like
right. Yeah, no, it's. I think that Andor is like a lot of people went into the Acolyte, expecting it to be a one type of thing, but it wasn't. Everybody went to Andor not really expecting. They didn't know what it was going to be. We had no idea. We had nothing to really size it up to, except for like what we saw in Rogue One, and the fact that what we got was insanely like just amazing. Just even made it even better, man. And so like when you stack up stuff like first 2 seasons of A Mandalorian and Andor, it's definitely, it doesn't reach those heights at all.
So here's how I stack everything. Let me know if you disagree or agree. I would place Andor season 1, Mandalorian season 2, Mandalorian season 1. Then I would go Ahsoka season 1, then Acolyte, then Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi are kind of sharing a space at the bottom.
Book of Boba Fett definitely at the bottom, but I feel like Acolyte shares a space with Obi-Wan.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And I mean, maybe, and I would say for the sake of, I mean, because there is a lot of like nostalgia and stuff behind Obi-Wan, and I feel like, Ewan McGregor has had a solid, as far as lead, his performance is a lot more solid than Amandala's, so that might
so you would actually edge it a
little bit higher. I understand what your gripes were, but like we said, like the Acolyte, there was a lot to like about it. We didn't hate it, but it definitely could have been better. A lot of the gripes that some of these other people are having, like I said, they're grasping for straws. But they could have, I don't know, like the writing, like you said, the intentions for some of these individuals, like there were some issues with the story. There's some disruption with the continuity of it. I don't really think that Obi-Wan had issues with continuity. Like, kind of exactly where he was going. Like they kind of spelled it out a little bit. It was just the way that it was presented was weird, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that like Acolyte, you know, Acolyte
edges a little bit below.
Yeah, edges a little bit, but yeah, it's definitely like clear above. I think that like Book of Boba Fett like is like way down there. It makes me sad because
and Mando season 3. Mando season 3 is also around Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Acolyte. It's not. I think it's below Acolyte. Mando season 3. It was just such a letdown for me.
But I will say, and let me know if you agree with me.
Okay, I will let you know.
Acolyte is better than X-Men Origins Wolverine. I had to put it out.
I think we can all agree that Acolyte is better than X-Men Origins Wolverine. If you want to check out our discussion of X-Men Origins Wolverine, that was a fun one. It was a couple months back at this point, but
I had to bring it in there because we're in the midst of that X-Men. We're in the midst of the X-Men series. This Acolyte episode really is to help kind of throw a little bit of a break in. Honestly, it helps us with our discussion because it gives us something different to discuss. But we also want to give you a little bit more time to be able to catch Deadpool and Wolverine, maybe for the first time or even a second time. And so
we're covering that next week, guys.
Next
week. Anthony, any final thoughts on Acolyte?
Acolyte, it was. I'll be honest with you, like going through it a second time, it was a little tougher for me because I knew, it was it wasn't that, I don't know, like it's just like maybe I was still fresh off of seeing it from before that I just didn't feel like I needed to watch it again, but like I still wanted to watch it just just for the sake of the episode, but I may not revisit the series again.
That's fair.
I may not revisit again. I may go back to specific episodes, like ones that I like, but as a whole, I probably won't come back to it again. You know, like, are you going to go back to Book of Boba Fett?
I probably will, just for completionist's sake, if I ever do like a rewatch of these shows. But I understand what you're saying. So, I totally get that feeling. But you know what, like, I probably will go back to is X-Men Origins Wolverine. Just
well, I mean, I think kidding. You are right, like for like the X-Men.
Yeah,
stuff.
I do. I have to go.
Was it? I know you're gonna have a great time with that one. But yeah, like I said, you know, it's if you've heard all of this stuff about it and haven't watched it yet, if you've listened to our whole episode and hadn't watched it yet, and honestly we didn't really like touch too much on like heavy like major spoilers on this one. I think this one,
we didn't.
I think that this one was more of like a discussion of the show and the really what's orbiting around it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like it's not the worst show that you're gonna watch, but like it's definitely at least worth watching at least once to see what it's about.
At least to make up your own opinion on it.
Like, right.
I've met people who hate the show but haven't watched an episode, and
like,
you only get that opinion if you're listening to other people who actively hate it,
right,
or are trying to get you to not watch the show, which is the entire reason the show isn't getting a second season, because people didn't let other people make up their own minds on it.
Right.
So anyway,
right, and honestly, at the end of the day, if you resonated with the show and you thought that this show was the best thing since sliced bread, you know what? Look, that's great for you. You know, like, don't let anything Dakota and I say or anybody else say take that away from you, because
there are people who genuinely love it. There are people who genuinely hate it.
There's probably people who genuinely There's probably people who genuinely love like Book of Boba Fett, or
I know people who love it,
even X-Men Origins Wolverine. You know, like there's probably people who genuinely love that too.
All right, you've gone too far, Anthony. You've gone too far.
But yeah, like at the end of the day, like if you enjoyed it, if you loved it, don't let anything us or the Phantom Menace or anybody say to take that away from you, because you liked it. You know.
Yeah. So as far as like, am I upset about the cancellation of the show? Yeah, I am. I would have liked to see where they went with the story. I think the actual Sith narrative that they have going on is fascinating because it eventually goes into the Phantom Menace. I want to see more of that. Right. So I want to see how Chimere and Plagueis and now Osha, they all kind of dive into that, Sith lineage. And we will in books or comics or maybe even a movie. Who knows? So, guys, thank you so much for listening to us here for our 92nd episode. Next week, we're covering Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe you've heard of it. The Wolverine. And,
yeah, we're going to make a name for ourselves next week.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Oh, man. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. If you want to check out any of our socials, be sure to click down in our show notes below. You'll find links to Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. And check out that video that I made where I kind of break down 20 different supposedly canon-breaking moments in The Acolyte, which don't actually break canon. I think it's a fun watch, especially if you have a little bit of a sense of humor. But if you want to give us a rating, review us here, please be sure to give us a
juicy 5-star
5-star review.
Yeah, yes. we don't like dry 5-star.
No, it's got to be juicy.
Yeah,
gotta be juicy.
Juicy enough to make Guy Fieri proud.
Of course, guys. See you in the next one. Have a good one.
Bye.